When you first move in with a partner, one of the most predictable arguments is, well, it's almost always about the thermostat.
Oh, absolutely. It's an absolute classic.
Right. Like you want it at a crisp 68 degrees so you can actually sleep under the blankets
Uh-huh.
without, waking up in a cold sweat.
Yeah, and then they want it at a tropical 74 so they don't have to wear a literal parka while watching TV in the living room.
Exactly. And it's funny, but it becomes this incredibly tense, zero-sum game almost immediately.
It really does because someone is freezing or someone is sweating, and both people feel, well, entirely justified in their physical reality.
Right. I mean, your body tells you it's cold, so you inherently believe it is cold.
Exactly. You can't just intellectually argue your body out of shivering. It's a biological fact to you in that moment.
Which feels like this baseline biological incompatibility, right?
Right.
You could just wish away being cold.
No, you really can't.
But, and this is where we're going today, what happens when that exact same dynamic isn't about the temperature of the room, but the temperature of the relationship?
That is the big question.
Specifically, what happens when two people in a committed relationship want sex at completely different frequencies?
See, the difference there is that when the room temperature is mismatched, we compromise by buying a heavier sweater or turning on a ceiling fan.
Right, it's an easy fix.
But when sexual desire is mismatched, we almost instantly assume that the relationship is fundamentally broken.
We jump straight to the worst case scenario.
We really do. And it is arguably one of the most common and frankly one of the heaviest issues a couple can face.
Because it's invisible, right?
Exactly. Unlike a broken arm where an X-ray gives you a clear line of fracture, a mismatch in desire doesn't offer a simple visual or, a quick fix.
It's just muddy.
It is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters.
And that is actually the biggest secret we want to share with you today on this deep dive. If you take absolutely nothing else away from this, please hear this.
Yeah, this is crucial.
A difference in desire does not mean your relationship is broken.
Not at all.
It absolutely does not mean that you are loved any less by your partner. We're going to map out exactly how you can build mutual safety, respect, and willingness, completely bypassing that heavy performance pressure that usually suffocates couples.
And we're doing this by looking exclusively at adult, non-explicit relationship education drawn from, clinical toolkits, psychological diaries, and recent sex research forums.
Right. And before we get into all of that, just a quick audio tag for you. You're listening to AI Dialogue Lab. Dialogue Lab.
Perfect. So where do we start unspooling this?
Well, to really understand how to build that mutual safety, I think we have to dismantle the core myth that causes the most pain first.
The love meter myth.
Yes, it's that little voice in a person's head that whispers, they really loved me, they would want me.
Which is so pervasive. It's this deeply ingrained cultural narrative that sexual desire is nothing more than a thermometer for romantic love.
Right. We literally use it as a love meter. But the clinical consensus and, well, decades of research, they tell a completely different story, don't they?
They absolutely do. Sexual desire discrepancy is a highly common feature of long-term relationships.
A feature, not a bug.
Exactly, it's a feature. The baseline reality of human biology is that desire fluctuates naturally over time for every single person on the planet.
Just because of life, basically.
Right. Stress, age, health, career changes, they all turn the dials on our libido.
But it's not even just the biological dials, is it? It's how we define the concept entirely.
Yeah, the way we even define the word desire varies wildly from person to person.
I found this part of the research so fascinating because when we say the word desire, we assume the person sitting next to us on the couch has the exact same dictionary definition in their head.
Which is almost never the case.
Right. The research from Sia von Sutherland's dissertation work points out that this just isn't true at all. For some people, sexual desire is defined primarily as a wish to please and be pleasured.
Yeah, it's very physical.
Very focused on the exchange of sensory experience, like an embodied tactile drive.
For those individuals, desire is experienced as an internal physical hunger, much like craving a really good meal or needing a deep stretch after a long flight.
Just a physical release.
Exactly. But for others, the definition is completely different. For them, sexual desire is a longing for relational intimacy.
It's emotional.
Very. The physical act is merely a vehicle to achieve a profound emotional closeness. The ultimate goal isn't the physical sensation, it's the psychological safety of feeling entirely connected to another human being.
So let's play that out in a real living room.
Mm,
You have one partner who views sex as a fun, physical release, like a way to shake off the stress of the day.
right.
And then you have another partner who views it as a profound metric of emotional safety, something that can only happen when they already feel deeply connected.
Yes, and that is a massive disconnect.
They aren't just experiencing different levels of biological desire. They're essentially speaking two different languages.
And when you don't realize you are speaking different languages, you start interpreting your partner's behavior as malicious or withholding.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you take it personally.
You really do. The partner seeking sensory release thinks, why are they so closed off to having fun?
While the other person is thinking something completely different.
Exactly. The partner seeking relational intimacy thinks, why do they only care about my body when we haven't even had a real conversation in 3 days?
That is such a painful translation error.
It is. And that fundamental translation error is the exact birthplace of resentment in a lot of relationships.
Which is perfectly illustrated by some incredibly revealing data we looked at from a study by Natalie Rosen.
Yes, the daily diary study.
Right, her team conducted a 35-day daily diary study involving 229 couples. And I just want to linger on that methodology for a second.
It's incredibly robust.
It really is. 35 days of daily diary entries from both partners. That is a massive, granular amount of real-time data.
Yeah, they aren't just asking people to look back over the last year and guess how they felt.
Exactly. They are tracking the daily ebb and flow of their lives as it happens.
Diary studies like this are basically the gold standard for psychological research
Why is that better than just a survey?
because human memory is notoriously flawed, especially when it comes to conflict.
Oh, for sure. If you're mad right now, the whole year looks terrible.
Precisely. If you ask a couple to reflect on their sex life over the past year, their current mood will heavily color their memory. But if you have them log their feelings every single night for over a month, you capture the actual micro-interactions.
You get the nuances.
You capture the Tuesday night where someone got home late, the Friday morning where they shared a laugh over coffee, and literally everything in between.
So with all that data, what did these hundreds of daily diaries actually reveal about desire differences?
The data showed something genuinely groundbreaking. It turns out that it is often the perceived discrepancy and how the couple handles it that creates the relational distress, rather than the raw mathematical difference in desire itself.
Wait, really? So it's not the actual numbers?
No, it's not.
So the story we tell ourselves about the gap causes more pain than the gap itself.
That is exactly it. If partner A wants sex 3 times a week and partner B wants it once a week, that is a mathematical discrepancy.
Right, just basic math.
But the math isn't what causes a fight at midnight. The fight happens because partner A perceives that partner B never wants to connect with them.
And partner B perceives that partner A is like a demanding roommate who only cares about physical gratification.
Exactly. Those perceived narratives trigger the conflict, not the numbers.
That makes so much sense. And there's another study we looked at by Kolbozeska and colleagues that focused specifically on couples in the postpartum period, which really hammers this home.
The postpartum period is such a perfect lens for this.
It has to be the ultimate stress test for a relationship. I mean, you are dealing with maximum sleep deprivation, hormonal crashes, and a complete upheaval of your personal identity.
Oh, completely. The physical reality of the postpartum body is entirely geared toward survival and caregiving.
Right. It's just triage mode.
And the concept of being touched out is very real. When a mother has been holding, feeding, and rocking an infant all day, her nervous system is often completely overwhelmed by physical contact.
So the last thing she wants is more touch.
The absolute last thing. Her body does not crave any more physical demands.
So you have this natural massive drop in desire.
Yes. But the Kolbozeska study found that inaccurate perceptions of a partner's desire don't inherently impair romantic relationships, even in this high-stress environment.
Wait, so even with all that stress, the drop in desire doesn't necessarily hurt the relationship.
Nope. The distress comes strictly from the narrative attached to it.
Back to the narrative again.
Always. If the higher desire partner thinks, my spouse's low desire means they find me unattractive now, or they don't love me anymore, that specific internal narrative is what causes the relational damage.
It's not the biological fact that their spouse was simply too exhausted to be intimate on a Tuesday.
Exactly. The exhaustion is just a fact. The meaning we assign to the exhaustion is what breaks our hearts.
I really want to dive deeper into what actually drives these fluctuations in desire, if it isn't a lack of love. because we have some fascinating data from a study by Emily Harris and colleagues.
The heteronormativity theory study.
Right. And I really want to emphasize to you, the listener, that we're just impartially reporting the data from the source material here.
Just looking at the math.
Exactly. We aren't taking any sociological sides. We're just looking at what the survey revealed about household dynamics. So the Harris study examined this heteronormativity theory, right?
Yes. They surveyed 677 women who were partnered with men and had children.
A pretty substantial group.
Very. And the researchers wanted to investigate how the division of household labor directly impacted sexual desire.
And the findings were incredibly stark.
They really were. The study found that performing a large proportion of the household labor was strongly associated with lower sexual desire for their partner.
Which on the surface just sounds like, oh, they're too tired.
Right. But the crucial part, the actual psychological mechanism behind it, was that this association was mediated by perceiving the partner as a dependent.
Okay, we need to unpack the mechanics of that,
Okay.
because that's huge.
It is huge.
If a woman feels like she is doing the lion's share of the domestic work, managing the schedules, remembering the grocery lists, organizing the child care,
Carrying the mental load,
well,
babes.
the mental load, it
Yeah.
fundamentally shifts how she views her partner.
Yes, it changes the entire dynamic.
Instead of viewing them as a romantic, capable co-pilot, the dynamic starts to feel more like she is managing another dependent in the house.
And that specific perception, feeling like a manager or a caregiver rather than a romantic equal, is what heavily suppresses the sexual desire.
Because it's hard to be attracted to someone you feel like you're parenting.
Exactly. From an evolutionary and neurological standpoint, caregiving and eroticism operate on completely different channels in the brain.
They just don't mix.
They can't mix. When your brain is bogged down by the mental load of running a household, it shifts into a high-alert executive functioning mode.
Like an air traffic controller.
Right. Your prefrontal cortex is blazing with logistical tasks. In that specific neurological state, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of your nervous system responsible for rest and digest, and crucially, arousal, is completely suppressed.
So it's not even a choice. Your body is physically preventing arousal.
You cannot feel erotic when your brain is operating as an air traffic controller. It's biologically impossible.
Okay, I understand the mental load mechanism rationally. Like, logically, I can sit here and agree that my partner being exhausted from doing the dishes or being stressed from managing our lives doesn't mean they don't love me.
Logically, sure.
I get that desire is contextual, but in the actual moment, sitting in the bedroom, a rejection feels incredibly deeply personal.
It hurts.
It hurts your ego immensely. How do we practically separate our own self-worth from our partner's physical availability on a random Thursday night?
It is incredibly difficult, which is why this raises a really vital conversation about attachment theory.
Attachment theory comes into play here.
Very much so. We have to stop viewing sexual desire as a dipstick you pull out to check the oil level of your relationship's affection.
That's a great metaphor.
Thanks. Desire is an intricate, tangled web of physical embodiment, hormonal fluctuations, daily stress levels, and, like you said, deep-seated attachment styles.
How does attachment style play into that specific moment of rejection?
Well, let's take someone with an anxious attachment style. They often seek out physical intimacy not just for physical pleasure, but as a way to soothe their own anxiety and prove to themselves that the relationship is secure.
Oh, so sex becomes a reassurance mechanism.
Exactly. It's a way to feel safe. If their partner says no because they have a headache, the anxious partner doesn't just hear the words, "I have a headache."
What do they hear?
Their nervous system hears, "The relationship is in danger. You are being abandoned."
Wow. So the rejection completely bypasses the logical brain and just hits the core attachment wound.
Exactly that. Recognizing these contextual factors, the chores, the stress, the attachment styles, it really helps de-escalate the personal sting of a no.
It gives you a buffer.
It does.
Yeah.
It allows the higher desire partner to pause their own panic and say to themselves, "This isn't about my attractiveness or my worth. This is about my partner's current physical and emotional bandwidth."
Which is such a healthier place to operate from.
When you successfully separate your core self-worth from your weekly sexual frequency, you create the necessary space for actual empathy instead of building a wall of resentment.
Which leads to a really interesting sociological question, I think.
What's that?
If desire differences don't mean a lack of love, and a no is often just a reflection of someone's bandwidth, why are we, as a culture, so completely obsessed with having the right amount of sex?
Oh, the obsession is real.
It's everywhere. People are constantly Googling, how many times a week should a healthy couple have sex?
Yeah.
We desperately want a benchmark,
We want to know we're normal.
right? We want a scorecard that tells us we are getting an A+ in relationship health.
And researchers have looked into this benchmark obsession extensively. We drew on work by Muse and colleagues, as well as Johnson and colleagues.
What were they looking for specifically?
They wanted to measure the actual correlation between sexual frequency, relationship satisfaction, and overall well-being.
And what did they find?
Initially, the data shows exactly what you would expect. There is a correlation. Going from having absolutely no intimacy to having some intimacy generally boosts relationship satisfaction.
That makes sense.
Hmm.
But the graph doesn't just go up forever, does it?
No, the benefit is not linear forever. This is where the law of diminishing returns applies to intimacy.
Diminishing returns on sex.
Yeah. We naturally assume that if having sex once a week makes you happy, having sex 5 times a week makes you 5 times happier.
Which sounds logical.
It does, but the data absolutely refutes that.
So what does the graph actually look like?
Muiz's research showed that well-being tends to plateau.
Just flattens out.
Completely. Once couples reach a certain frequency, which was often reported around once a week for many satisfied couples in the study, having sex more frequently than that did not associate with any further increases in well-being. The happiness curve completely flattens out.
Wow. And the study by Johnson and colleagues takes us even further, right? Using a statistical method called latent profile analysis.
Yes, latent profile analysis.
Can you explain how it actually works for us non-statisticians?
Think of latent profile analysis as a sorting algorithm for human behavior.
Okay, a sorting algorithm.
Instead of just taking the average of everyone mashed together, which might tell you the average couple has sex, like 1.5 times a week, a number that actually represents nobody all of it, this method identifies hidden subgroups.
So it finds the clusters within a larger population based on patterns in their answers?
Exactly. It finds the different types of couples in the data.
So what clusters did the algorithm actually find?
It found several distinct profiles. While there is a large cluster of satisfied couples who report having sex about once a week, there is also a statistically significant cluster of what we can call happy low-frequency couples.
Happy low frequency. That phrase alone probably just lifted a massive weight off the shoulders of thousands of people listening right now.
I hope so, because it's completely real.
You can be low frequency and highly satisfied.
It proves mathematically that there is no universal correct number.
None at all.
For some couples, high frequency is a vital, joyous part of their connection. For others, low frequency is perfectly comfortable, and their relationship satisfaction remains incredibly high because they connect in other ways.
So where does the danger come in?
The danger comes when a couple from that happy low frequency cluster reads a magazine article claiming they should be intimate 3 times a week, and suddenly they manufacture distress where literally none existed before.
That is so frustrating.
Yeah.
Using sexual frequency as a relationship scorecard seems exactly like assuming that hitting 10,000 steps on your smartwatch automatically makes you an elite athlete.
Oh, that is a perfect analogy.
Right. The metric itself becomes a trap.
I love that analogy. Let's build on it for a second. What happens when you realize at 11:30 p.m. that you only have 8,000 steps?
You start marching in place in your living room while brushing your teeth just to make the watch buzz.
Exactly.
You are getting the metric, but you are entirely missing the actual health benefit of the exercise. You are just performing a task for the machine.
Which is exactly what happens with compliant checklist sex.
Oh, wow. Checklist sex.
When you gamify your relationship by chasing a specific number, you strip away the authenticity of the connection.
You're just pacing in the living room.
Yeah. Frequency matters mainly as a marker of connection and reciprocity, not as a standalone target. When couples chase a number, they inevitably breed performance anxiety.
It ruins the actual experience.
It really does. The higher desire partner feels like a nag trying to hit a quota, and the lower desire partner feels like a machine being asked to perform on command.
And neither of those roles is a recipe for romance.
Definitely not.
So if a couple does get trapped by that smartwatch scorecard mentality,
Yeah.
what happens inside the house? Like if they're locked in a battle over frequency,
Yeah.
how does that anxiety physically manifest in their daily lives?
If you look at the clinical literature, particularly the work referenced in Sutherland's dissertation, you see this dynamic described as the demand-withdrawal cycle,
The demand withdrawal cycle.
also known as the pressure and withdrawal loop. It is one of the most thoroughly documented and destructive behavioral patterns in romantic relationships.
Walk us through a hyper-detailed scenario of how this loop functions in real time. Let's say it's a Friday night.
Okay, Friday night. It usually starts with the higher desire partner. They want connection, so they pursue it.
Which seems innocent enough.
Sure. They might initiate physical touch, suggest opening a bottle of wine and going to the bedroom, or even just express frustration about the lack of intimacy lately.
Right.
This places actual or sometimes just perceived pressure on the lower desire partner.
And we already established that pressure and stress are the ultimate killers of desire.
Exactly. The lower desire partner feels this pressure bearing down on them. Instead of feeling invited into a shared, joyous experience, they feel demanded upon.
So their body shuts down even more.
Their biological and emotional interest diminishes even further. To protect their own boundaries and avoid the discomfort of the pressure, they withdraw.
They pull away.
They pull away physically and emotionally. They might pick up their phone, find a chore to do in the other room, or feign exhaustion.
Which then makes the higher desire partner feel intensely rejected and panicked.
Right, triggering the attachment wound.
The attachment wound flares up, so they pursue even harder to get reassurance, and the cycle spins faster and faster.
And the real tragedy of this loop is what happens over the span of months or years. We see a phenomenon emerge that clinicians sometimes call the roommate fear.
The roommate fear. Explain how that changes the baseline affection in a home.
Over time, as the pressure and withdrawal loop solidifies into concrete, the lower desire partner might start avoiding all forms of physical touch.
Wait, all forms, even non-sexual.
Everything. They stop holding hands on the couch during a movie. They stop giving their partner a hug in the kitchen while making coffee. They stop offering back rubs after a long day.
Because they are terrified that any physical contact whatsoever will be interpreted as a green light for sex.
Exactly. They do the mental calculus and think, if I hug my partner right now, they are going to think it's an initiation.
Right.
And when things escalate, and I have to say that I just wanted a hug, they will be deeply disappointed. We will have a massive fight, and the whole weekend will be ruined.
It's just not worth the risk.
It is significantly safer to just not hug them at all. So the couple loses not just their sexual connection, but their baseline physical affection.
The well runs completely dry.
They become roommates who just happen to share a mortgage.
That is heartbreaking, because the withdrawal isn't out of malice. It's out of a desperate need for safety and boundary preservation.
Exactly, as a protective mechanism.
So how do people usually try to fix this? The most common advice you hear from friends, from media, sometimes even from poorly trained therapists, is to just do it.
Oh, the worst advice possible.
Right, just buy some lingerie, put on some music, and push through the awkwardness to break the ice and get the engine running again.
And that brings us to the work of clinical sex therapist Martha Kalpi. Her framework explicitly and forcefully warns against that exact advice.
She's totally against it.
Completely. She argues that telling a struggling couple to just do it or to have icebreaker sex to resolve a desired discrepancy is not only unhelpful, it is actively dangerous to the psychological health of the relationship.
Why is it dangerous, though, if they're just trying to rip the Band-Aid off and get past the awkwardness?
Because just do it ignores a massive, jagged iceberg of underlying issues.
Okay, what kind of issues?
Kalpi outlines several reasons why this is a terrible idea. First, it ignores potential unresolved physical pain.
Which is really common.
Incredibly common. If one partner experiences pain during intercourse, pushing through it creates profound emotional, physical, and relational damage. Your brain literally learns to associate your partner with pain.
That's horrifying.
It gets worse. Second, it leads to subtle, corrosive consent violations.
What does a subtle consent violation look like in the context of a long-term marriage? I mean, we usually associate consent violations with strangers, not spouses.
In a marriage, a subtle consent violation looks like someone saying yes with their mouth, but their body is entirely rigid, their eyes are closed, they are mentally dissociating by thinking about the grocery list.
Wow.
And they are only engaging in the act to prevent an argument or to fulfill what they view as a marital duty.
It's compliance sex.
It is compliant sex, not consensual, enthusiastic sex.
It's essentially self-inflicted trauma. You are teaching your body to abandon its own boundaries.
Yes. And over time, that causes profound psychological harm and completely eradicates any remaining genuine desire.
Are there other reasons Kalpi warns against this?
Yes. Furthermore, Kalpi points out that the just do it advice is completely blind to asexuality.
Oh, that's a great point.
A partner might be on the asexual spectrum, experiencing very little to no sexual attraction inherently. A treatment plan focused on forcing an increase in sexual desire in that scenario is marginalizing and deeply harmful.
It just doesn't apply.
Right. Finally, the advice is not trauma-informed. If someone has a history of sexual trauma, pushing them to just do it can trigger severe emotional flashbacks and blocks.
So if you force the icebreaker sex, you are basically reinforcing the demand withdrawal cycle, but with added trauma.
Exactly.
You might get a momentary spike in the scorecard frequency for that week, but the emotional wall between the partners grows 10 feet higher.
Which brings us back to the core problem. The higher desire partner is lonely, the lower desire partner is terrified, and neither can initiate without causing pain.
Wait, so if just do it is toxic and the demand withdrawal cycle makes us avoid even hugging in the kitchen, aren't we just guaranteeing that we drift apart into permanent roommates?
It feels like an impossible trap.
Yeah. If you can't touch them and you can't force it, how on earth do you break a loop that tight?
This is where we look at the interpersonal emotion regulation model, or the IRM.
Developed by Natalie Rosen's research team, right?
Yes. The IRM posits that a couple's sexual difficulties are deeply intertwined with how they regulate each other's emotions on a daily basis.
How does emotional regulation actually connect to physical desire?
When couples engage in maladaptive strategies like the higher desire partner pressuring or the lower desire partner stonewalling and avoiding, they fundamentally dysregulate each other emotionally.
So they stress each other out.
They're keeping each other in a chronic state of fight or flight.
And as we discussed earlier with the mental load, you cannot experience genuine sexual desire in a state of fight or flight. The biology doesn't allow it.
When your sympathetic nervous system is activated by a perceived threat, which in this case is the pressure to perform or the fear of rejection, your body floods with cortisol.
And cortisol is the enemy of connection.
Cortisol is the absolute enemy of oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. So, to stop being roommates, you do not jump straight back into the bedroom.
You have to fix the foundation.
You have to fix the communication and the emotional regulation first. You have to make it entirely safe to simply talk before it can ever be safe to touch.
Which bridges us perfectly to the practical application of all this research.
This is the critical part.
We need to transition from analyzing this theoretical loop to looking at actual models of consent-centered conversation. How do couples actually talk about comfort, boundaries, and curiosity without triggering a fight?
The research absolutely backs up why communication is the necessary next step. We looked at a paper from the IRIS group, the Institute for Relational Intimacy study.
What did they find?
They showed that sexual satisfaction actually mediates the effect of communication on perceived desire discrepancy.
Let me make sure I have the sequence of that mediation right. Good communication leads to better sexual satisfaction, which in turn leads to less distress over the fact that you might have mismatched desire.
That is perfectly stated.
Excellent.
Correct. When the communication is solid and safe, the discrepancy stops feeling like an existential threat to the relationship.
You're on the same team.
Exactly. The couple feels like a unified team navigating a logistical challenge, rather than bitter adversaries fighting over a scarce resource.
But, in theory, talking about sex sounds easy. In reality, when you are sitting on the edge of the bed in your pajamas at the end of a long day, it is terrifying.
Oh, it's paralyzing.
The communication carries a massive risk of vulnerability. The lower desire partner is terrified of sounding like a broken prude, and the higher desire partner is terrified of being rejected again or sounding like a demanding creep.
It is an absolute minefield of vulnerability, which is why public health guidance and clinical frameworks suggest adopting a very specific, highly structured model of consent-centered conversation.
So it's not just winging it.
No, do not wing it. The focus must be direct, empowering, specific, and it has to entirely avoid euphemisms.
No hinting, no vague, so we're going to do anything tonight.
Never hint. Hinting breeds massive anxiety because it forces the other person to guess the stakes of the question.
That's so true.
If you hint, the lower desire partner has to wonder, are they asking for a back rub, or are they going to be furious if we don't have intercourse?
The ambiguity is the threat.
Precisely. We want to use a communication model based on 4 clear pillars: observation, feeling, need, and invitation.
Break those 4 pillars down for us if you don't mind.
Sure. You observe a reality without judgment. You state your feeling without blaming. You articulate a specific need. And then, crucially, you invite your partner to collaborate.
We really need to give the listeners some deeply practical examples here.
Absolutely.
Let's role play a bad version of checking in, versus a good version? What are some safe wording prompts that a couple can actually use tonight to start checking in without triggering that demand withdrawal loop? Let's start with checking in on comfort.
Okay. The classic bad version of checking in on comfort is asking, is this good or do you like this while you are touching them?
Wait, why is that bad? It sounds polite.
It sounds polite, but it is fundamentally a pass-fail test.
Oh, I see.
If the partner says no, they feel like they are criticizing you and ruining the mood. If they say yes, just to be polite, they are engaging in compliant sex.
It's a track.
It triggers performance anxiety for both people. The better phrasing, the consent-centered phrasing, is an open-ended question like, what feels good to you right now? Or what pace feels comfortable for you?
What feels good to you right now is brilliant because it doesn't demand a yes or no. It invites a description.
It keeps it open.
It assumes that there is something that feels good and we just need to find it together.
Now let's look at checking in on boundaries. You want to establish an absolute safety net so the roommate fear doesn't take over.
Right. To kill the anxiety.
You use phrases like, is this okay? Or even more powerfully, what should I pause or stop?
I love that. Should I pause or stop? By putting those words in the room, it assumes that stopping is a perfectly normal, acceptable, and expected part of the process, not a catastrophic failure.
Finally, we use language built on curiosity. Curiosity is the ultimate antidote to pressure.
So,
Instead of saying, let's do X tonight, you might ask, do you want to try something new or keep it simple today? Or what would you like more of, less of, or differently? Or simply, tell me what you like.
keep it simple today.
Ah,
That phrase just gives so much grace to an exhausted partner.
it really does.
It acknowledges that we don't have to have cinematic fireworks every single time we touch. Sometimes we just want a simple, quiet connection.
The psychological shift that happens when you use this language is profound. It takes this tense, high-stakes talk about sex and turns it into a collaborative process of co-creating a comfortable plan.
It diffuses the bomb.
And there is one more phrase, perhaps the most important one in the entire clinical toolkit, that is incredibly powerful for reducing pressure.
Okay, what is it?
Giving a partner the explicit verbalized option to delay. Saying out loud, would you prefer to talk about it first or decide later?
Oh, wow. Would you prefer to talk about it first or decide later? You are literally handing them the control panel to the entire interaction.
When a lower desire partner feels that they have complete, unpunished autonomy to hit the brakes, to pause, or to table the discussion for tomorrow without facing a guilt trip, their sympathetic nervous system finally relaxes.
The cortisol drops.
The cortisol drops, and ironically, when the nervous system relaxes and feels safe, biological desire actually has the space to surface naturally.
So we've established that the discrepancy isn't a lack of love. We've debunked the myth of a normal scorecard frequency and the damage of gamifying intimacy.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. We've mapped out how the demand withdrawal loop turns us into roommates because of fear, and we've laid out the precise vocabulary for consent-centered communication. Now, we need the roadmap to actually rebuild the physical side. Let's look at the repair steps.
Once the verbal communication has been made safer, the couple can slowly begin to rebuild the physical connection. But it has to be incredibly incremental.
We aren't jumping from deciding later straight into a marathon session.
Definitely not.
I want to walk through Martha Kalpi's specific step-by-step clinical progression. I read Kalpi's framework in the sources, and what shocked me was that her first step to fixing a mutual sex life doesn't actually involve your partner at all.
No, it doesn't. Step 1 is entirely solitary. It is called building embodiment.
Building embodiment, meaning getting back into your own physical skin. Why is that necessary?
Because when people are stuck in a cycle of sexual distress and pressure for years, they often dissociate from their bodies entirely as a coping mechanism.
Just checking out mentally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your body becomes a site of stress and failure, so your brain unplugs from it. Calby explains that before you can safely involve a partner in pleasure, the individual must reconnect with their own body through everyday, non-sexual pleasure.
Give me some deep texture on what that looks like in daily life. How do you reconnect if you feel entirely numb?
By hyper-focusing on small, sensory joys that have zero stakes.
Like what?
It could be the feeling of warm, soapy water on your hands while you're washing the dishes. Instead of rushing through the chore, you stop and notice the temperature of the water.
Grounding yourself in it.
Right. It could be noticing the warmth and vibration of a purring cat curled up in your lap. It could be the feeling of the sun on your face when you step outside to get the mail, or the crispness of getting into a bed with freshly washed sheets.
It's essentially mindfulness but specifically targeted at physical, tactile pleasure.
Yes, exactly.
You are retraining your vagus nerve to recognize that your body is capable of feeling good things, and it is safe to notice them without an ulterior motive.
Yes. You are rebuilding the neural pathways for pleasure. Once an individual can locate non-sexual pleasure in their own body consistently, they graduate to step two, which is shared conscious pleasure.
Bringing the partner into those small moments.
But crucially, still strictly non-sexual. It's about taking those everyday moments and experiencing them together, consciously acknowledging them.
What does that look like?
For example, sitting across the table sipping coffee together on a Sunday morning. Instead of looking at your phones, you look at each other, breathe in the steam, relax your shoulders, and consciously share an moment of sensory appreciation.
You're rebuilding the muscle memory of experiencing joy in the same room as your partner.
You're establishing a new baseline rule.
Mhm.
We can share a physical, pleasurable experience without it being a transaction that leads to an escalation.
No strings attached.
The coffee is just coffee. The joy is just joy, which paves the way for step three, low anxiety touch.
This is the critical juncture where we actually make physical contact again. How do we prevent the roommate fear from flaring up the second skin touches skin?
Calpe uses a brilliant 0 to 10 scale to manage the anxiety of this transition.
How does the scale work?
If sharing a cup of coffee across the table is a 0 on the anxiety and intensity scale and full sexual intercourse is a 10, couples at this stage should aim exclusively for activities that sit at a 2 to a 4.
A 2 to a 4. So it should be comfortable, but stretch the physical connection just a tiny bit past roommate status.
Examples of a 2 to a 4 might be holding hands while out on an evening walk, snuggling shoulder to shoulder on the couch while watching a movie,
For very low stakes.
or giving each other a 5-minute shoulder massage over your clothes. The absolute explicit agreement made beforehand is that this touch will not escalate beyond a 4 under any circumstances.
Setting the ceiling at a 4 is incredibly liberating. That explicit agreement is the magic.
It takes the pressure off immediately.
If the lower desire partner knows for a biological fact that the shoulder massage is just a shoulder massage and the boundary is ironclad, they can actually relax and enjoy the tactile sensation instead of tensing up and waiting for the other shoe to drop.
And that profound relaxation allows for genuine intimacy to return. It creates a reservoir of positive touch. Finally, we reach step 4 in the progression, which is savoring.
Savoring.
And for this, we look at a fascinating 21-day diary study by Stephanie Raposo involving 121 couples.
What does it mean to savor in a clinical context?
Savoring is the deliberate cognitive act of holding on to and magnifying positive experiences in your mind.
Like replaying a highlight reel.
Exactly. Raposo's study showed that when couples intentionally savored positive sexual or intimate experiences, whether that meant actively reminiscing about a great moment from the past or anticipating a future one, it significantly boosted their long-term relationship satisfaction and mitigated their daily sexual distress.
So after you have that nice moment snuggling on the couch, your level 3 touch, you don't just move on to paying the bills and forget it happened.
You hold on to it.
You take a deliberate moment the next morning to say to your partner, I really loved holding you on the couch last night. It felt so nice to just be close to you.
You water the seed. Savoring reinforces the positive neural pathways you are trying to rebuild. It proves to both partners that the connection is real, it is valued, and it is safe.
This has been an incredibly dense, layered, and rewarding deep dive into the mechanics of human connection. To make sure we don't lose the forest for the trees after all this data, let's synthesize everything we've unpacked into exactly 3 core takeaways for the listener to carry with them today.
I think the first takeaway has to be our central thesis, drawn from all the clinical literature.
Which is,
Desire differences are incredibly common, and they are absolutely not automatic evidence of poor compatibility or lack of love. They are a normal, biologically expected feature of long-term relationships that require management, not panic.
takeaway number 2. There is no universal normal frequency for sex. The happy low-frequency cluster exists and thrives. A smartwatch scorecard mentality will only breed anxiety and compliant sex. Your goal is mutual safety, respect, and satisfaction, not hitting a weekly numerical target manufactured by a magazine.
And takeaway number 3. The most effective way to bridge a gap in desire is through direct, consent-centered communication. You have to step out of the demand-withdrawal loop and drive the conversation with curiosity and open invitations, rather than with pressure, guilt, or blame.
Observation, feeling, need, and invitation. What feels good to you right now would you prefer to decide later? It changes everything about the dynamic.
It truly shifts the couple from being combatants fighting over a resource to being collaborators solving a puzzle together.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into the science of desire, we always like to leave you, the listener, with a final thought, something to chew on as you go about the rest of your day, building on the frameworks we've discussed.
If you are currently navigating a desire discrepancy and you are feeling the heavy, isolating weight of that pressure and withdrawal loop in your own home, I want to leave you with this provocative question to mull over. What if the most intimate thing you could do with your partner this week has absolutely nothing to do with sex, but simply involves noticing a shared moment of everyday joy together?
If this episode helps, please like, subscribe, share, and turn on the bell for AI Dialogue Lab.